My name is Tom Rourke, and I should have known something was wrong when my wife started buying protein powder by the case. Jenny had never cared about fitness until she turned 34 and decided she needed to reclaim her body. That's a direct quote, by the way. She said it while standing in our kitchen, hands on her hips, looking at me like I was personally responsible for gravity's effects on her ass. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm an IT repair specialist. I fix computers for a living, which means I spend my days dealing with people who think turning something off and on again is rocket science. It's honest work, but it doesn't exactly scream alpha male to a woman who's suddenly discovered the gym scene. Jenny made that abundantly clear when she started coming home talking about Chad this and Chad that. Chad DeWitt. Even his name sounds like it belongs on a protein shake bottle. He's Jenny's personal trainer and business partner at Elite Fitness, the kind of place where the monthly membership costs more than my car payment. Jenny insisted we could afford it because she was investing in herself. What she was really investing in, I discovered, was a 6'2" wall of muscle with the IQ of a doorknob and the morals of a politician. The first red flag should have been when Jenny started doing laundry separately. I need special detergent for my workout clothes, she explained, which seemed reasonable enough. The second red flag was when she began working out at 5 in the morning and again at 8 at night. Chad says consistency is key, she'd chirp, grabbing her gym bag and kissing my cheek like she was doing me a favor. The third red flag was finding a gym bag in her car that definitely wasn't hers. It was a Tuesday evening in March when I discovered it. Jenny had asked me to grab her phone charger from her Honda, and there it was in the trunk. A black Nike duffel bag with "Property of C" written on a piece of athletic tape stuck to the side. Inside were men's boxer briefs, size large, definitely not mine. There was also a bottle of cologne that cost more than I make in a day, and a handwritten note that said, "Thanks for the workout, babe. Same time tomorrow?" C. I stood in our driveway, holding another man's underwear, and laughed. Actually laughed out loud, not because it was funny, but because it was so goddamn predictable. Jenny had become a walking cliché, and I'd been too busy fixing other people's problems to notice my own life falling apart. At least she labeled it, I muttered to myself. No confusion at the lost and found. I put everything back exactly as I'd found it and went inside. Jenny was in the shower, probably washing off the scent of her afternoon training session. I sat on our couch and stared at the wall, trying to decide what to do next. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, but a bigger part of me wanted to know exactly what I was dealing with first. That's when I remembered the security cameras. I'd installed them 6 months ago after a string of break-ins in our neighborhood. Jenny had rolled her eyes at the expense, calling it paranoia, but I'd insisted. The cameras covered the front door, back door, and living room. I'd set them up to record continuously and store footage on our home server for 30 days before automatically deleting. I pulled up the app on my phone and started scrolling through the day's footage. Jenny had left for her morning session at 5:15. She'd returned at 7:30, showered, and left again at 8 for work. So far, so normal. But then I checked the afternoon footage. At 2:47 p.m., Jenny's Honda pulled into our driveway. She got out, but she wasn't alone. A tall, muscular man in a tank top followed her to our front door. They were laughing about something, and his hand was on the small of her back in a way that was definitely not professional. I watched them enter our house. I watched them sit on our couch. I watched my wife of 8 years kiss another man in our living room. And then I watched them move to our bedroom, where thankfully the cameras didn't reach. They were in there for an hour and 23 minutes. "Well," I said to the empty living room, "that's cardio I never signed up for." Jenny emerged from the bathroom wrapped in a towel, her hair wet and her cheeks flushed. She looked beautiful, which made everything worse somehow. "How was your day?" she asked, the same question she'd asked me every day for 8 years. Educational, I replied. She didn't catch the sarcasm. She never did. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I needed time to think, and more importantly, I needed time to investigate. Jenny left for her morning session at her usual time, kissing my forehead and telling me to feel better. The irony wasn't lost on me. I spent the first hour just sitting at my kitchen table, drinking coffee and staring at my laptop screen. The rational part of my brain kept insisting there had to be some explanation, some misunderstanding. Maybe Chad was just a friend. Maybe the underwear belonged to someone else. Maybe I'd misinterpreted what I'd seen on the security footage. But the rational part of my brain was quickly being overruled by the part that remembered every late night, every canceled dinner, every time Jenny had been too tired to spend time with me, but somehow found energy for 2-hour gym sessions. I started with social media. Jenny's Instagram was a carefully curated collection of workout selfies, healthy meal photos, and motivational quotes. Nothing obviously incriminating, but the comments section told a different story. Chad's username, Chad the Trainer, appeared under almost every post with fire emojis, heart-eye faces, and comments like, "Looking strong, babe," and "That's my girl." My girl. Right. I dug deeper into Chad's profile. He was exactly what you'd expect. Shirtless mirror selfies, protein shake endorsements, and photos of him posing with various clients at the gym. But it was his story highlights that caught my attention. There was one labeled Training Partners that featured several videos of him working out with different women. Jenny appeared in at least 6 of them, always positioned closer to him than seemed necessary for proper form. The really interesting stuff was in the comments on his posts. Other gym members, both male and female, seemed to treat Chad like some kind of celebrity. They asked for advice, complimented his physique, and generally kissed his ass in the way people do when they want something from someone they perceive as important. But there were also some comments that seemed off. References to special training sessions and private consultations. One woman had posted, "Thanks for the extra help with my form yesterday. Those one-on-one sessions really make a difference." Chad had replied with a winking emoji and, "Anytime, beautiful." I was starting to see a pattern. I decided to check our joint credit card statements next. If Jenny was having an affair, there would be evidence. Unexplained charges, payments to places I didn't recognize, maybe even hotel bills. What I found was worse than hotel bills. Jenny had been using our credit card to pay for supplements, protein powders, and something called metabolic enhancement coaching to the tune of $300 a month. She'd also been making regular payments to a company called Elite Nutrition Solutions, which a quick Google search revealed was Chad's side business. My wife was paying her lover with my money. The audacity was almost impressive. I was still scrolling through bank statements when my phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor Ray. Ray Kowalski was a retired cop who lived 2 houses down and had become something of a friend over the years. He was the kind of guy who noticed everything and forgot nothing, which made him either the best neighbor to have or the worst, depending on your perspective. "Hey, Tom. Everything okay? Saw you didn't leave for work this morning. Also saw you had a visitor yesterday afternoon. Tall guy in a red Mustang." I stared at the text for a long moment. Ray had seen Chad's car. Of course he had. Ray probably knew the license plate number, the exact time of arrival and departure, and what Chad had been wearing. I texted back, "Just taking a sick day. Thanks for keeping an eye on things." Ray's response was immediate. "Anytime. Let me know if you need anything. And Tom, if you ever want to talk about anything, I'm around." The subtext was clear. Ray knew something was up, and he was offering to help. I filed that information away for later use. I spent the rest of the morning going through Jenny's computer. She'd left it on the kitchen counter, probably assuming I'd spend my sick day in bed watching Netflix like a normal person. Instead, I was conducting digital forensics on my own marriage. Jenny wasn't particularly careful about her digital security, which made my job easier. Her browser history showed frequent visits to fitness websites, online shopping for workout clothes, and a disturbing number of searches for things like how to know if you're ready for divorce and starting over at 34. But the real goldmine was her email. Jenny had been using her personal Gmail account to communicate with Chad, and she'd saved everything. Hundreds of messages going back 6 months, starting innocent enough with questions about workout routines and gradually becoming more personal, more intimate, and eventually explicitly intimate. The early emails were almost sweet in their awkwardness. Chad complimenting Jenny's dedication, Jenny thanking him for his patience with a beginner. But by December, they were planning private sessions and discussing how to be more discreet. By January, they were saying they loved each other. The most recent email was from 3 days ago. Chad had written, "Can't wait until we don't have to sneak around anymore. You deserve so much better than what you have now." Jenny's response, "Soon. I just need to figure out the right way to handle Tom. He's not a bad guy, but he's not the right guy for me anymore. I need someone who understands my goals, my ambitions, someone like you." I closed the laptop and sat back in my chair. There it was, in black and white. My wife didn't just want to cheat on me, she wanted to replace me. I was an obstacle to be handled, a problem to be solved, so she could move on to her upgraded life with Chad the trainer. The funny thing was, I wasn't even surprised. Hurt, yes. Angry, absolutely. But surprised? Not really. Jenny had been pulling away from me for months, and I'd been too busy with work and too comfortable in our routine to pay attention. I'd let my marriage die through neglect, and now someone else was picking through the corpse. But here's the thing about being an IT guy. You learn to be methodical. You don't just identify the problem. You develop a comprehensive solution. You test it, refine it, and then you implement it with precision. Jenny thought I was too dumb to notice what was happening. According to her email to Chad, I was completely oblivious and not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. She'd told her lover that I was so wrapped up in my boring little computer problems that I wouldn't notice if she brought Chad home and slept with him on the kitchen table. Well, she was half right. I hadn't noticed for months. But now that I had noticed, I was going to make sure everyone else noticed too. The next step in my plan required reconnaissance, and for that, I needed to get inside Elite Fitness. I'd never set foot in the place before, partly because I couldn't afford the membership and partly because gyms made me feel like a fraud. But desperate times called for desperate measures. I signed up for a 1-week trial membership, telling the perky receptionist that my wife had recommended the place. She lit up at the mention of Jenny's name. "Oh, you're Jenny Rourke's husband. She's like totally amazing. Chad says she's one of his most dedicated clients. You're so lucky to have such a motivated wife." "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Lucky me." The gym was exactly what I'd expected. Wall-to-wall mirrors, gleaming equipment, and enough testosterone in the air to choke a horse. Jenny was in the middle of a session with Chad when I walked in, doing squats while he stood behind her, his hands on her hips, correcting her form. I watched from across the room, pretending to struggle with a treadmill that probably cost more than my car. Chad was everything I wasn't: tall, muscular, confident, and completely comfortable being the center of attention. He moved through the gym like he owned it, high-fiving members, shouting encouragement, and generally behaving like the king of his very small kingdom. Jenny was eating it up. She laughed at his jokes, hung on his every word, and looked at him the way she used to look at me back when we were dating. It should have been painful to watch, but instead it was informative. I was seeing their dynamic in person, understanding how they interacted, learning their patterns. After Jenny finished her session and left for work, I approached Chad. He was wiping down equipment, his tank top soaked with sweat, his muscles glistening under the gym's fluorescent lights. "Excuse me," I said. "Are you Chad? My wife Jenny Rourke has told me amazing things about you." His face lit up with the kind of smile that probably worked on most people. "Tom, Dude, Jenny talks about you all the time. She's incredible, man. Really dedicated to her fitness journey. You should be proud. Oh, I am, I said. She's definitely found her passion. I was wondering if you might have time for a consultation. I'd love to get started on my own fitness journey. Chad looked me up and down, probably calculating how much work it would take to turn my soft IT body into something presentable. Absolutely, man. Always happy to help a friend of Jenny's. How about we start with an assessment? I can show you some basic movements, get a sense of your current fitness level. For the next hour, Chad put me through a series of exercises that left me sweating, shaking, and questioning my life choices. But it was worth it because it gave me a chance to observe him up close. Chad was exactly the kind of guy I'd expected, charming, confident, and completely full of himself. He name-dropped constantly, mentioned his celebrity clients, and made sure I knew how exclusive his training services were. More importantly, he was careless. He left his phone unlocked on the equipment while he demonstrated exercises. He talked openly about other clients, sharing details about their personal lives that definitely violated some kind of professional ethics. And he mentioned, almost casually, that he supplemented his training income by providing specialized nutrition consulting to select clients. It's not technically legal, he said with a wink, but the results speak for themselves. Jenny's made incredible progress since she started my program. I filed that information away for later use. After the session, I was sitting in the gym's juice bar, pretending to recover while actually eavesdropping on conversations, when I overheard something interesting. Two women were talking at the table next to me, and one of them mentioned Chad by name. I can't believe Melanie doesn't know, the first woman was saying. I mean, it's so obvious. Chad's not exactly subtle about his extracurricular activities. Poor thing, the second woman replied. She seems so nice, and she's got those two little kids to think about. Melanie, Chad's wife. I'd seen her mentioned in his social media posts but hadn't really thought about her as a real person with real feelings. Now I was realizing that she was just as much a victim of this situation as I was. I spent the next 2 days learning everything I could about Melanie DeWitt. She was 36, a part-time graphic designer who worked from home to take care of their twin daughters. Her Instagram was the opposite of Chad's. Family photos, kid art projects, and the kind of mundane domestic content that spoke to a woman focused on her home life rather than her husband's gym empire. But there were cracks in the facade if you knew where to look. Recent posts had fewer photos of Chad, more solo shots of her with the kids. Her captions had shifted from blessed to have this amazing family to grateful for these two beautiful girls. It was subtle, but it suggested that all was not well in the DeWitt household. I decided to reach out to her. Finding her contact information was easier than it should have been. Chad had left his phone unlocked during our training session, and I'd memorized Melanie's number from his recent calls list. I know it sounds creepy, but desperate times and all that. I sent her a text from a burner phone I'd bought specifically for this purpose. Hi, Melanie. My name is Tom Rourke. I'm married to one of Chad's clients, Jenny. I think we need to talk. Her response came 3 hours later. I was wondering when someone would contact me. We agreed to meet at a diner across town the next afternoon. I got there early and chose a booth in the back where we could talk privately. Melanie arrived exactly on time, and I recognized her immediately from her photos. She was attractive in an understated way, with shoulder-length brown hair and tired eyes that suggested she hadn't been sleeping well. Tom? She asked, sliding into the booth across from me. That's me. Thanks for coming. She ordered coffee and got straight to the point. How long have you known? About a week. You? 6 months, maybe longer if I'm being honest with myself. She wrapped her hands around her coffee mug like she was trying to warm herself. I kept hoping I was wrong, that I was being paranoid or jealous for no reason, but the signs were all there. What gave it away? Melanie laughed, but there was no humor in it. Chad started working out more, which seems ridiculous since he literally lives at the gym. But he was doing extra sessions, staying later, coming home with this energy that definitely wasn't from lifting weights. And then there were the phone calls. Late night calls? Early morning, late night, weekends. Always stepping outside to take them, always claiming it was work-related. But I've been married to Chad for 12 years. I know the difference between his business voice and his flirting voice. We sat in silence for a moment, two people who'd been betrayed by the people they'd trusted most. It should have been awkward, but instead it felt like a relief. Finally, someone who understood what I was going through. I found emails, I said eventually, between Jenny and Chad. They're planning to make their relationship public. Jenny wants to leave me. Melanie nodded. Chad's been talking about making some changes in his life. He thinks I don't know what that means, but I'm not stupid. He wants out of our marriage so he can play house with his gym bunny. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. This has to be incredibly difficult with the kids involved. The kids are actually what made me agree to meet with you, Melanie said. I've been trying to figure out how to protect them from the fallout of their father's midlife crisis, but I realized I can't do it alone. What are you thinking? Melanie leaned forward, and for the first time since she'd sat down, I saw something other than sadness in her eyes. I saw anger. Cold, calculating anger. I'm thinking that Chad and Jenny have made their choice, she said. They want to blow up both of our lives so they can be together. Fine. But they're going to do it on our terms, not theirs. They want drama? We'll give them drama. They want their relationship to be public? We'll make sure it's very, very public. I smiled for the first time in days. I like the way you think. Good, Melanie said, pulling out a folder from her purse. Because I've been documenting everything for months, and I have a lot more evidence than just emails. Melanie's folder was a masterpiece of organized revenge. She'd been collecting evidence of Chad's infidelity with the methodical precision of someone who'd worked in law enforcement, which it turned out she had. Before becoming a stay-at-home mom, she'd been a paralegal for a family law firm. I know how these things work, she explained, spreading photographs, bank statements, and printed text messages across the diner table. If you want to destroy someone's life, you need documentation. And if you want to destroy someone's life completely, you need to hit them from multiple angles simultaneously. The evidence she'd gathered was damning. Chad hadn't just been cheating with Jenny, he'd been running what amounted to a small-scale prostitution ring out of elite fitness. He was providing steroids and other performance-enhancing drugs to clients in exchange for cash and intimate favors. Some of the women were married. Some were barely legal. All of them thought they were special, thought they were the only one receiving Chad's extra attention. Your wife isn't his first affair, Melanie said, showing me a series of photos she'd taken with a telephoto lens. She's just the most recent, and probably the most serious, based on the emails you found. Jenny appeared in several of the photos, but so did at least 4 other women I didn't recognize. Chad had a type. Attractive, insecure, married women looking for validation and attention. He was essentially running a one-man cult of personality, and Jenny had drunk the Kool-Aid. The drugs are the key, Melanie continued. Chad's been buying steroids and other substances online and reselling them to clients at a massive markup. It's completely illegal, and it's been going on for at least 2 years. I have bank records showing deposits that don't match his legitimate income from the gym. She showed me printouts of Chad's personal banking information. I didn't ask how she'd obtained access to his accounts, and she didn't volunteer the information. But the numbers told a clear story. Chad was making an extra $2,000 a month selling drugs to gym members. Jenny's been buying from him, I said, remembering the credit card charges I'd found. Most of his affairs start that way. He offers to help them optimize their results with special supplements. Once they're dependent on the drugs, they're dependent on him. It's actually pretty smart in a completely sociopathic way. We spent the next 3 hours planning our attack. It needed to be comprehensive, devastating, and most importantly, legal. We weren't going to break any laws in our quest for revenge, but we were going to use every legal tool at our disposal to destroy Chad and Jenny's lives. Phase 1 would be social destruction. We would expose the affair and Chad's drug dealing to their social circles, starting with the gym community and expanding outward. Melanie had contact information for most of Elite Fitness's members, and I had access to Jenny's social media accounts. Phase 2 would be professional destruction. Chad would lose his job at Elite Fitness when his drug dealing was exposed. Jenny would face consequences at her own job when her drug use became public knowledge. We would also report Chad's illegal activities to the appropriate authorities. Phase 3 would be financial destruction. Melanie would file for divorce and seek maximum alimony and child support. I would do the same with Jenny, making sure she got nothing from our shared assets. We would also pursue civil lawsuits for emotional distress and any other damages we could prove. Phase 4 would be the coup de grace, a very public confrontation that would humiliate both Chad and Jenny in front of their friends, family, and professional contacts. We were still working out the details, but it would involve the gym, social media, and maximum public embarrassment. The key, Melanie said, is timing. We need to execute all phases simultaneously so they don't have time to mount a defense or control the narrative. By the time they realize what's happening, it will be too late to stop it. I was impressed by her thoroughness and her ruthlessness. Melanie had been planning this campaign for months, waiting for the right moment to strike. My discovery of the affair had simply provided her with an ally and additional evidence. "There's one more thing," she said as we prepared to leave the diner. "I want to make sure you understand what we're doing here. This isn't just about getting even. This is about destroying them completely. Their reputations, their careers, their social standing, their financial security. When we're done, they'll have nothing left but each other, and I guarantee that won't be enough." "Are you having second thoughts?" I asked. Melanie's smile was cold and determined. "Not even slightly. Chad made his choice when he decided to betray his family. Jenny made her choice when she decided to help him do it. Now they get to live with the consequences." We shook hands in the parking lot, two unlikely allies united by betrayal and a shared desire for justice, or revenge. At that point, the distinction didn't seem particularly important. Over the next week, we refined our plan and gathered additional evidence. I installed keylogger software on Jenny's computer, giving me access to all her passwords and online activities. Melanie used her paralegal skills to research the legal implications of Chad's drug dealing and identify the best ways to report him to authorities. We also began reaching out to other victims. It turned out that Chad's behavior was an open secret among certain circles at Elite Fitness. Several women had stories about inappropriate behavior, unwanted advances, and pressure to purchase special supplements. Most had been too embarrassed or intimidated to come forward, but when Melanie contacted them with evidence and a plan, they were eager to participate in bringing Chad down. Jenny, meanwhile, remained completely oblivious. She continued her routine of morning and evening workouts, continued paying Chad for his services with our joint credit card, and continued planning her exit from our marriage. Her emails to Chad had become increasingly bold, discussing specific timelines for leaving me and moving in together. In one particularly galling message, she wrote, "Tom's so clueless. I could probably move you into our spare bedroom and he wouldn't notice. He's completely checked out of our marriage. Sometimes I feel bad about what we're doing, but then I remember that he stopped fighting for us a long time ago." She was right about one thing. I had stopped fighting for our marriage. But I hadn't stopped fighting entirely. I was just choosing my battles more carefully. The irony was that Jenny's assessment of me as clueless and checked out was exactly what made our plan possible. She wasn't being careful because she didn't think she needed to be. Chad was equally careless, so confident in his charm and manipulation skills that he never considered the possibility that his victims might organize against him. They were about to learn that underestimating people is a dangerous mistake. We launched Phase 1 on a Tuesday morning in April. Jenny had left for her usual early workout, and Chad was at the gym preparing for his first clients of the day. Neither of them had any idea that their world was about to collapse. Melanie and I had spent the previous evening creating anonymous social media accounts and preparing our evidence packages. We had photos, emails, bank records, and testimonials from other victims. Everything was organized, documented, and ready for distribution. The first target was Elite Fitness's private Facebook group, where members shared workout tips, celebrated achievements, and generally kissed Chad's ass on a daily basis. Melanie had maintained access to the group through a fake account she'd created months earlier. At exactly 8 a.m., she posted a lengthy message titled, "The Truth About Chad DeWitt." It included photos of Chad with various women in compromising situations, screenshots of his drug-dealing text messages, and bank records showing his illegal income. The post concluded with a list of women who had been intimately harassed or assaulted by Chad, along with contact information for anyone who wanted to share their own experiences. The response was immediate and explosive. Within minutes, the post had dozens of comments, likes, and shares. Some people defended Chad, claiming the evidence was fake or taken out of context, but others began sharing their own stories, adding details and confirmation to the growing scandal. While Melanie managed the Facebook group, I was targeting Chad's Instagram and Twitter accounts. I'd created multiple fake profiles over the past week, each with enough history and followers to seem legitimate. Now I was using them to flood Chad's posts with comments linking to the evidence we'd compiled. "Hey Chad, why don't you tell your followers about your side business selling steroids? Interesting workout technique. Is that how you train all your female clients? Your wife might be interested in seeing these photos. Should I tag her?" Chad's social media presence went from celebratory to defensive within hours. He started deleting comments and blocking accounts, but we had too many fake profiles for him to keep up. Every comment he deleted was replaced by 2 more. Every account he blocked was replaced by a new one. By noon, the story had spread beyond the gym community. Local fitness bloggers were picking it up, sharing screenshots and adding their own commentary. Someone had created a hashtag, #ChadTheCheat. It was trending locally within hours. Jenny called me at work around 1 p.m., her voice shaky and confused. "Tom, have you seen what's happening online? Someone's spreading horrible rumors about Chad. They're saying he's been having affairs and selling drugs. It's completely insane." "That's terrible," I said, injecting just the right amount of concern into my voice. "Have you talked to Chad about it?" "He says it's all lies, that someone's trying to destroy his reputation. But Tom, some of the photos, they look real, and they're saying he's been involved with multiple clients, including—" She trailed off. "Including what?" "Including me. They have photos of us together, but they're making it look like something it's not. We're just trainer and client, you know? But the way they've captioned the photos, it looks like we're having an affair." I almost laughed. Jenny was still trying to maintain the lie even as evidence of her betrayal was being broadcast across the internet. She was either incredibly stupid or incredibly desperate, possibly both. "I'm sure it will blow over," I said. "People love drama, but they have short attention spans. This will probably be forgotten by next week." I was lying, of course. This was just the beginning. Phase 2 launched that evening. Melanie had spent the afternoon contacting local law enforcement, the DEA, and Elite Fitness's corporate headquarters. She'd provided them with detailed evidence of Chad's drug dealing, including financial records, witness statements, and photos of illegal substances. She'd also reached out to the local news media. 3 different TV stations were now investigating the story, and a reporter from the city's largest newspaper was preparing an exposé for the next day's edition. By Wednesday morning, Chad's world was in free fall. Elite Fitness had suspended him pending an internal investigation. The DEA had raided his home and found enough steroids and other illegal substances to file federal charges. His personal training certification had been revoked by the state licensing board. Jenny was collateral damage in the assault on Chad. Her own drug use, documented through credit card records and witness testimony, had cost her the part-time fitness instructor position she'd held at a local community center. More importantly, it had destroyed her credibility with friends and family who had previously seen her as a dedicated fitness enthusiast rather than a drug-using adulteress. But the real masterstroke was what happened at Elite Fitness that Wednesday afternoon. Melanie and I had coordinated with several of Chad's other victims to stage a confrontation during the gym's busiest hours. I arrived at the gym around 5 p.m. when it was packed with after-work exercisers. Jenny was there, of course, still trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy despite the chaos surrounding her. She was on a treadmill, running with the desperate intensity of someone trying to outrun her problems. Chad was conspicuously absent, probably meeting with lawyers or trying to figure out how to salvage his imploding life. But his absence made our plan even more effective because it left Jenny isolated and vulnerable. At exactly 5:30 p.m., 6 women entered the gym together. They were all former clients of Chad's, all victims of his manipulation and abuse. Melanie had spent weeks organizing them, preparing them for this moment. They didn't cause a scene. They didn't scream or throw things or make dramatic accusations. Instead, they simply positioned themselves around the gym and began talking to other members, sharing their stories in calm, measured voices. "I thought I was special," one woman told a group near the free weights. "Chad convinced me that I needed his special supplements to reach my fitness goals. It cost me $3,000 and nearly destroyed my marriage. He told me that physical intimacy was part of the training process," another woman explained to a cluster of shocked gym members. "He said it would help me build confidence and body awareness. I believed him because I trusted him." The conversation spread throughout the gym like wildfire. Members stopped their workouts to listen. Staff members tried to intervene but were outnumbered and overwhelmed. Within minutes, the entire gym was focused on the testimonials being shared by Chad's victims. Jenny realized what was happening and tried to leave, but she found her path blocked by curious gym members who recognized her from the photos that had been circulating online. Someone asked if she was Chad's girlfriend. Another person wanted to know if she was also selling drugs. I watched from across the room as my wife's carefully constructed new life crumbled around her. She looked small and frightened, nothing like the confident woman who had been planning to leave me for a better life with Chad. The gym members weren't hostile, but they were intensely curious, and their questions were relentless. "Are you really married to someone else? Did you know about the other women? How long has this been going on?" Jenny finally broke free from the crowd and ran for the exit. I followed her to the parking lot, where she was sitting in her car, crying into her hands. I knocked on her window. She looked up, her face streaked with tears and mascara. "Tom, what are you doing here?" "I came to work out," I said, "but it looks like the gym is having some kind of drama. Are you okay?" She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to decide how much to tell me, how much she could still hide. "Everything's falling apart," she said finally. "Chad's in trouble with the law, and people are saying terrible things about both of us. I don't know what to do." "Maybe you should come home," I suggested. "We can talk about it." Jenny nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Yeah, okay. I think I'd like that." She followed me home, and we sat in our living room for the first time in months, without the television on or our phones in our hands. Jenny told me everything, or at least her version of everything. She admitted to the affair but claimed it had been just physical. She admitted to using Chad's supplements, but insisted she hadn't known they were illegal. She painted herself as a victim of Chad's manipulation, rather than a willing participant in betraying our marriage. I listened without interrupting, nodding sympathetically at appropriate moments. When she finished, I took her hands in mine and looked directly into her eyes. "Jenny," I said, "I want you to know that I forgive you." She started crying again, this time with what looked like relief. I love you, Tom. I know I screwed up, but I love you. Can we try to work through this? Of course, I lied. But first, there's something I need to show you. I pulled out my laptop and opened the folder containing all the evidence Melanie and I had compiled. Emails, photos, bank records, everything. Jenny's face went white as she realized how much I knew, how long I'd known it. You've been planning this, she whispered. The gym, the confrontation, everything. You orchestrated all of it. I did. But you just said you forgave me. I smiled, and I'm sure it wasn't a pleasant expression. I lied, just like you've been lying to me for months. The difference is, my lies actually served a purpose. Jenny stood up, her sadness transforming into anger. You bastard! You destroyed Chad's life. You destroyed my life. For what? Revenge? Justice, I corrected. And we're not done yet. The next phase of our plan required patience. Chad was facing federal drug charges and had been effectively blacklisted from the fitness industry. Jenny had lost her job and most of her friends. Their affair was public knowledge, their reputations were in ruins, and their financial situations were desperate. But Melanie and I wanted more than just professional and social destruction. We wanted complete and total humiliation, the kind of public embarrassment that would follow them for years. The opportunity came 3 weeks later, when Elite Fitness announced they were hosting a community healing event to address the scandal and restore trust in their brand. It was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon and would include speeches from management, testimonials from members, and a commitment to new policies preventing future abuse. Chad wasn't invited, obviously, but Jenny decided to attend, probably hoping to rehabilitate her image or at least show her face in public without running away. It was a mistake that played directly into our hands. Melanie and I had spent the previous week preparing for this moment. We'd coordinated with local media, arranged for additional witnesses, and planned a confrontation that would be both devastating and completely legal. I arrived at Elite Fitness an hour before the event started, ostensibly to support the gym's efforts to move forward from the scandal. In reality, I was there to set up recording equipment and position our allies throughout the crowd. Jenny arrived 20 minutes before the official start time, dressed in a conservative outfit that was clearly chosen to project respectability and remorse. She looked nervous but determined, like someone who had decided to face her problems head-on rather than continue hiding from them. The gym's manager opened the event with a speech about learning from mistakes and building a stronger community. Several members shared testimonials about their positive experiences at the gym and their commitment to moving forward. It was all very civilized and therapeutic. Then Melanie took the microphone. "I'd like to say something," she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the gym's sound system. "My name is Melanie DeWitt. I was married to Chad DeWitt for 12 years, and I have 2 young daughters who will grow up knowing that their father chose steroids and adultery over his family." The room went silent. This wasn't part of the planned program, but no one seemed willing to stop her. "I want to talk about accountability," Melanie continued. "Chad didn't destroy lives in a vacuum. He had help. He had enablers. He had willing participants who knew he was married, knew he had children, and decided that their own gratification was more important than the damage they were causing." She turned to look directly at Jenny, who had gone pale and was clearly looking for an exit. "Jenny Rourke is here today," Melanie said. "She's the woman who helped my husband betray his family. She's also married, by the way, to a man who trusted her completely and deserved better than what she gave him." Jenny stood up, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "I don't have to listen to this." "Actually," I said, standing up from my seat across the room, "I think you do." Jenny spun around to face me, her expression shifting from anger to confusion to dawning horror as she realized this was another setup. "Tom, what are you doing here?" "I'm here to support the gym's commitment to honesty and accountability," I said, walking toward the front of the room. I think the community deserves to know the full truth about what happened here. I had prepared remarks, but in the moment, I decided to speak from the heart instead. My wife Jenny has been having an affair with Chad DeWitt for 8 months, I announced to the room. She used our joint credit card to buy illegal drugs from him. She used our home for their intimate encounters. And she was planning to leave me for him until his arrest made that plan less attractive. Jenny tried to interrupt, but I continued speaking. Jenny told Chad that I was too stupid to notice what was happening. She said I was completely oblivious and not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. She was right about one thing. I didn't notice for a long time. But once I did notice, I decided to make sure everyone else noticed too. I gestured to Melanie, who was still holding the microphone. Melanie and I have spent the past month documenting every aspect of Chad and Jenny's affair. We have emails, photos, financial records, and witness testimony. We've shared this evidence with law enforcement, with employers, with family members, and with anyone else who had a right to know the truth. The room was completely silent now. Even the gym staff had stopped pretending to manage the situation and were listening with obvious fascination. Jenny thought she could upgrade her life by trading me for Chad, I continued. She wanted someone more exciting, more attractive, more successful. Well, congratulations, Jenny. You got exactly what you wanted. Chad's unemployed, facing federal charges, and has 2 kids to support on no income. He's all yours. Jenny was crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage and humiliation. "You're a vindictive asshole," she screamed at me. "You destroyed everything out of spite. You couldn't just let me go. You had to make sure I had nothing left." "You're right," I admitted. "I am vindictive, but I'm not spiteful. Spite is petty and pointless. What I did was strategic and justified. You betrayed our marriage, stole our money, and planned to abandon me for another man. I simply made sure there were consequences for those choices." I turned to address the room at large. Chad DeWitt was a predator who used his position of trust to manipulate vulnerable women. Jenny Rourke was his willing accomplice in destroying families and betraying marriages. They both got exactly what they deserved. The crowd began to murmur and shift. Some people seemed uncomfortable with the public confrontation, but others were clearly supportive of what Melanie and I had done. Several people applauded. Jenny looked around the room, seeing nothing but judgment and condemnation in the faces surrounding her. She was completely isolated, completely exposed, and completely defeated. "I loved you," she said to me, her voice breaking. "No," I replied. "You loved the idea of me. You loved having a stable, reliable husband who paid the bills and didn't ask too many questions. But when you decided you wanted something more exciting, you didn't have the courage to end our marriage honestly. Instead, you chose to betray me and humiliate me. The only difference is that your betrayal was private and your humiliation is public." Jenny ran from the gym, pushing through the crowd and fleeing to her car. Several people followed her with their phones, recording her dramatic exit for social media posterity. Melanie handed the microphone back to the gym manager and walked over to where I was standing. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Satisfied," I said. "Finally, completely satisfied." The gym's community healing event ended shortly after that, but the real healing had already begun. Not for Chad and Jenny, who would spend years dealing with the consequences of their choices, but for Melanie and me, who had finally gotten the justice we deserved. 3 months later, our divorces were finalized. Jenny got nothing from our shared assets, and Chad was ordered to pay maximum alimony and child support to Melanie, despite having no income. He was eventually sentenced to 18 months in federal prison for drug distribution. Jenny moved back in with her parents, who had disowned her after seeing the evidence of her affair, but eventually took her back out of pity rather than love. She lost 20 pounds, started drinking heavily, and aged 5 years in 6 months. The last I heard, she was working at a call center and living alone in a studio apartment. Chad served his sentence and was released to a world where his reputation preceded him everywhere he went. He couldn't get a job in the fitness industry, couldn't get a loan, couldn't even get a date without women Googling his name and finding the extensive documentation of his crimes. Melanie used the settlement money to start her own business and bought a house in a better school district for her daughters. She never remarried, but she seemed genuinely happy for the first time in years. As for me, I discovered that revenge, properly executed, is indeed a dish best served cold. It took months of planning, weeks of execution, and years of consequences, but in the end, justice was served. Jenny had been right about one thing. I wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, but I was sharp enough to destroy her life when she gave me sufficient motivation, and that, it turned out, was sharp enough.